way to my Father, but I will return.
In the name of Allah, the Beneficent, the Merciful, I bear witness that there is no God but Allah, and I bear witness that Muhammad is his messenger. I further bear witness that Allah came in the person of Master Fard Muhammad, and that he raised the Honorable Elijah Muhammad and has placed him on the throne of power over creation. And I further bear witness that the Honorable Louis Farrakhan is his Christ, the Lamb of God, through whom Allah is establishing his eternal kingdom. Assalamu alaikum. I am Karriem Allah, and thank you for taking time to view this important message. As is customary, we will begin with verses from the Holy Quran. Say, Allah speaking to his messenger or the believers, say, those who invent a lie against Allah will never prosper. A little enjoyment in this world, and then to us will be their return. Then shall we make them taste the severest penalty for their blasphemies. Because of the very apparent desperation of the synagogue of Satan to destroy the Honorable Louis Farrakhan, it is necessary that we continue to discuss the prophesied flood of slander and propaganda against him, coming through Hollywood and other mass media sectors owned and controlled by these satanic families. Let us consider verse 69 that we just read, in light of what Jesus said in the Gospels about the true essence and identity of human beings. He states, I and my Father are one. Then the Jews took up stones again to stone him. Jesus answered them, many good works have I showed you from my Father. For which of those works do ye stone me? The Jews answered him, saying, for a good work we stone thee not, but for blasphemy, and because thou, being a man, makest thyself God. Jesus answered them, is it not written in your law, I said, ye are all gods? Now these verses provide us with key insights into how Allah views each human being. These verses also give us insight into the crucifixion of the Messiah. For one, we definitely learn that those who hated Jesus admitted that he was a worker of good. Hence, they had to come up with another justification for getting rid of him. So they used the excuse that his declaration that he was one with the Father was blasphemous. However, Jesus referred his enemies to their own book, their own law, which stated that when he appeared to redeem humanity, that he would teach the reality of man as God. So in words, the wicked leaders of this world should have been expecting him to do and say exactly what he said or is saying and is doing. Now, if we recall the making of Adam in the book of Genesis, Adam is made in the image of God. And since this was the reality, then who else could Adam be but God under the Most High God, his creator? This shows that a lie against any human being is a lie committed against Allah. And that's really something we should think carefully about, because many people like to say that they're not doing this against the Lord, but you're doing the evil against your brother. And the Bible has much to say about that when it comes to how we treat one another. We won't go into that here, but the point should be well understood. Now, obviously, the rich and powerful members of the Pharisees, aka the synagogue of Satan, were not going to literally pick up stones and rocks and hurl them at Jesus. That would be beneath them. Well, have you heard the cliche? Those who live in glass houses should not throw stones. This is a proverb that means that people should not condemn others for their faults or sins when they are laden with sins and faults for which they themselves could be condemned. So the stones that the synagogue of Satan has been throwing at the Messiah, the Honorable Louis Farrakhan, are blasphemies and lies coming through its government and social systems and through its mass media apparatus. These stones are meant to turn the people against him and consequently against the divine guidance designed to produce a just and peaceful world. Now, Jesus in the Bible, he challenges each of us to be far better than those who sought his death. He states, "For I say unto you, that except your righteousness shall exceed the righteousness of the scribes and Pharisees, ye shall in no case enter the kingdom of heaven." Well, the scribes here represents the writers that produce this satanic world. The writers of Hollywood scripts, writers of unjust and inhumane legislation, writers of propaganda coming through newspapers, and writers of filthy and degenerate words and songs. We are also informed by Jesus in these verses, or this verse, that entrance into the kingdom of heaven is predicated on more than mere forgiveness of sin and so-called being born again. It is also predicated on doing good to others and exuding a quality of righteousness greater than those who now have considerable control over our lives. So Jesus was peeping into something in the people. He would not have to have stated, if your righteousness does not exceed the righteousness of those who govern you, meaning you're likely to have the behaviors they heaped on you. So your righteousness would be equal or worse than theirs. But in any case, unless it exceeded the righteousness of those who control what you think and what you do, you won't see the kingdom of heaven. So he didn't pay it all. There's always a payment that has to be paid, and it's in our works and in our conduct. Now, in the case of the Messiah, his good works are monumental, especially when compared to the wicked works of those who govern this evil world. For example, the satanic families of the synagogue of Satan, and we named them in previous messages, real human beings, real families, no Satan in the ground, Satan in the form of Yaqub, who gave them charge. Hence, they are Yaqub's synagogue. These families are the Rothschilds, the Rockefellers, the DuPonts, and the Astor families. And if we trace every entity in this world, it'll all lead back to them, since they control the wealth and resources that nations depend on. Well, they control and own the mass media. And they control and own the weapons industry, and are on record as having used both industries to destroy people mentally, spiritually, and physically. Now, I ask you, when has the Honorable Louis Farrakhan promoted filth through the mass media? When has he built weapons of mass destruction? And when has he fabricated wars that destroy millions of gullible people who believe in the synagogue of Satan hook, line, and sinker. Now, since the satanic owners of Hollywood and some of the writers, producers, and actors who work for them will likely move forward in their blasphemy against the Honorable Louis Farrakhan through their movies and television shows, I strongly encourage everyone to become more acquainted with the Honorable Louis Farrakhan in his work so that you will know firsthand the value of his message to you and to your family. This way, you will not be a victim of Hollywood's characterization of an invented Louis Farrakhan. Excuse me. Now, why should we take time to examine the message of the Honorable Louis Farrakhan? Well, you will gain a greater understanding of what Messiah means. This is imperative because many people are not familiar with this title and function and how it relates to establishing the kingdom of God in our lives, in our families, and in our communities. In other words, the world within us and around us could be much better at the twinkling of an eye if we had the wisdom and knowledge and divine guidance that brings that about. And you will find that message coming through the Honorable Louis Farrakhan. So I encourage you to take time to examine his words yourself. There's plenty of it, plenty of his words. He's been teaching us civilization for more than 60 years. Now, as one raised directly by the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, me, to make known and to explain to you the Honorable Louis Farrakhan's great commission as the Christ, I am naturally a witness of him. Notwithstanding, we all know that a person is judged, again, by what they do and what they have done. And this fact is established in the Bible. Now, of course, I'm a good witness of a good man. There's other people who try to be witnesses and put evil on him. But in either case, Jesus states in the gospel concerning himself, but I have greater witness than that of John the Baptist. For the works which the Father hath given me to finish, the same works that I do bear witness of me, that the Father hath sent me. Again, therefore, the best witness of the Honorable Louis Farrakhan is his vast work among us, in his self-concept as the Messiah, as one taught and raised by Master Fard Muhammad and the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. So by examining the Honorable Louis Farrakhan's work of redemption and of divine guidance, you can easily compare it against the filth and wickedness of the satanic leaders coming through their political, social, and entertainment sectors. Now, in this book, the Holy Quran, it states, "Woe to every sinful liar who hears the messages of Allah recited to him, then persist in haughtiness or arrogance, as though he had not heard them." Well, the synagogue of Satan, the owners of Hollywood, are the sinful liars along with those who do their bidding for the sake of money and fame. Now, they have been taught the messages of Allah by the Honorable Elijah Muhammad and the Honorable Louis Farrakhan. Yet in their arrogance, they have persisted in promoting filth, wickedness, and indecency. Now, in his great book, the Honorable Louis Farrakhan, A Torchlight for America. And if you know anything about a torchlight, if you're in a cave, you need a torchlight. I guess if you had another source of light, you could very well use that. But the meaning is that it's a dark place here in America, and we need a light in order to see how we can get out of darkness. Well, in this great monumental book, which was written in 1993, before many people were born today, the Honorable Louis Farrakhan instructed the artistic community and entertainment industry as follows. The artistic community has historically been the vanguard of social change. What is now needed is for the artistic community to lead a cultural revolution. On the physical level, man is what he eats. Spiritually, as he thinketh in his heart, so is he. Proverbs 23, verse 7. If the American people are constantly fed filth and garbage through newspapers, magazines, television, movies, plays, and music, if the public, like the proverbial swine, has become a lover of filth, and if thoughts guide behavior, what do the thoughts of the American people produce? Do the thoughts of the American people produce rape, incest, murder, theft, greed, and the destruction of family and institutions of society? I would argue that the answer is yes. Now, we can reason with this. Even if you're involved in those industries and have been doing these wicked things, you can reason with that. You may just be the person who's just haughty and act like you haven't heard it, but you can still reason with this, with what he just stated, or what I read from this book. Now, do the facts support the Honorable Louis Farrakhan's statement? Well, just consider this. Hardly any parent teaches their children violent acts. I didn't teach my children violence. Most parents don't. So how do children get introduced to violence, murder, robbery, rape, etc.? Well, consider these facts published by the American Academy of Family Physicians. It states, an average American youth will witness 200,000 violent acts on television before age 18. Violence is often considerable, even in programs not advertised as violent. Overall, weapons appear on primetime television an average of 9 times each hour. An estimated 54% of American children can watch this programming from the privacy of their own bedrooms. I guess this means that violence is so pervasive it's out of parental control, unless you just throw your TV out of the window. Continuing. Studies have found that 91% of movies on television contain violence. 91%. Even extreme violence. Several researchers have described an increase of violent content in movies despite a national rating system. They note that the amount of gun violence in top grossing, money-making, PG-13 films has more than tripled since the introduction of the rating in 1985. It was also noted that in 2012, popular PG-13 films contained significantly more gun violence than R-rated films. Now, notice that the National Rifle Association, the NRA, which is this nation's longest standing civil rights organization. Notice how the NRA is not mentioned here. Well, maybe since the NRA is being used as a scapegoat for the vicious gun violence taking place among adolescents, the organization might want to consider combating the real culprit promoting violence, which is Hollywood, as just affirmed by the American Academy of Family Physicians. Now, again, we innately know that it's not right to glorify murder, robbery, rape, and corruption. Yet such movies and television shows do it in a very, again, pervasive manner. Now, in the Holy Quran, Allah declares in a chapter that is titled The Slanderer. Chapter 104, he states, "Woe to every slanderer, defamer, who amasses wealth and counts it. He thinks that his wealth will make him abide. Nay, he will certainly be hurled into the crushing disaster. And what will make thee realize what the crushing disaster is? It is the fire kindled by Allah, which rises over the hearts. Surely it is closed in on them in extended columns." Now, Hollywood is a rich industry, and many of those who spread wickedness and slander through the roles they play are also wealthy and considered stars. They're walking on the red carpet, and their galas is symbolic of the blood that they helped shed among the masses of people through the violent acts and roles they play. In verses 6 through 9, Allah informs us that the chastisement that the slanderers experience is one that covers their hearts and bounds them in anguish. So there's no doubt that the series Godfather of Harlem is filthy, wicked, and scandalous. And the actors who slander the names of Black people's national treasures face this crushing disaster within their hearts and minds. Now we're going to explore this reality. See, this is why there's no need for anyone who has love for any of those who are being portrayed as evil and unrighteous. You don't need to harm anybody because the damage is already being done and the unrighteous acts being committed by those persons. Now, most, if not all, careers that are instrumental in upholding this satanic world have drawbacks or consequences on those involved. So you don't escape. And since Hollywood is the primary means through which behaviors and human indulgences are modeled for the public, we'll do this in a movie so they can do it out there. Then its detrimental effect on its actors in particular have been duly noted. Many articles have been written about celebrities coming forward to reveal their mental health illnesses. Let's consider this one from the Guardian news agency, the very popular The Guardian. It states, "It is practically a professional requirement that actors be emotional and vulnerable, but only recently has protecting their mental well-being become a priority. Actor and playwright Millie Thomas is sick of the image of the tortured artist. Quote, there's nothing romantic or glamorous about depression, she says. But Thomas believes that the idea persists, particularly for performers. Actors are expected to expose themselves emotionally, often with little regard for how it affects their states of mind. At the same time, they work in a profession characterized by instability, in which self-worth often rests on their ability to get the next role. Until recently, however, little attention had been paid to the relationship between acting and mental health. One of the reasons Thomas wrote her solo play, Dust, an unflinching look at one young woman's suicide, was because she was frustrated with reductive understandings of mental health. She recalls her own experience of depression. Quote, "I was very, very ill, but also completely able to get out of bed every day and go to work and do my job. And I think that's a blessing and a curse. I just thought, we're not talking about this." Now, how can anyone invest themselves emotionally and mentally in playing wicked roles? Murderers, liars, criminals, prostitutes, whores, pimps, and foul-mouthed degenerates, and not suffer any mental health consequences? You can, because of the way Allah made the brain and the purpose of the brain, which we will address in a minute. And this will show us why you don't get away. You didn't create yourself, so you can't get away from what the Creator had in mind for our creation and the consequences of not abiding by the law of our creation. Now, here's another article on the problem of celebrities and mental illness, published by the National Alliance on Mental Illness, NAMI. It states, "I remember the first time I was asked to secure a celebrity for a NAMI event in 2006. It was for a press event to help encourage media coverage of a major NAMI initiative. After many weeks of attempts and rejection, we were fortunate to have Oscar and Emmy-winning actor Patty Duke agree to be our spokesperson. I asked her why it was so difficult to find someone from the entertainment industry willing to speak out. She shared that at that time in Hollywood, talent would run the risk of getting blacklisted or denied parts if it were known that they had a mental health condition. The risk was considered too high for many. When I asked her why she was able then to come forward, she laughed and said, quote, 'Well, dear, everyone already knows my story of bipolar disorder. And besides, I've been the president of the Screen Actors Guild and had a successful career. I can afford to take risk. And if not me, then who will be among the first to step forward?' End of quote. So how well do actors suffering quietly from mental illness enjoy their money and fame? The Honorable Elijah Muhammad and the Honorable Louis Farrakhan have taught us about the root of mental illness, which bears on the purpose of why Allah created the brain. The Honorable Elijah Muhammad, the man whom the synagogue of Satan vilifies, gave us knowledge on the origin of the brain. He states, "In the beginning, the God who created us had no material to use to begin a creation. He had only himself. Therefore, out of darkness, in the thoughtless and invisible, he brought out the visible vision and thought and idea. He made a brain which had the power to cover the sphere of our thinking and to produce from that thought what image or vision that the brain cells could conceive. So this wondrous universe of light and life is the result of the power of the brain. Now, how many people are taught this knowledge through today's educational systems? How many actors know this? Well, for that matter, how many boxers and football players and people who damage their brain know this? Apparently not very many, and if they do, they certainly are the ones who don't care. The Honorable Louis Farrakhan's teaching on the purpose of the brain gives us an indication of his sincere desire to improve the quality of our lives, even in this satanic world, and also demonstrates why he is the Messiah. Now, he states, the Honorable Elijah Muhammad taught us that the brain cells of the original people are constructed to think right. To think right means to think in accordance with truth and actual facts. Thinking contrary to the truth does damage to brain cells and impairs the vision. If we are created to think right, we are also created to do right. Any act we participate in that is contrary to right thinking and acting creates an unwanted burden on the mind. It also could be said the heart, as stated in the Holy Quran. He continues, the burden of sin covers the intellect, veils the vision, and impairs the power of the mind to do the wonderful things that Allah created the mind to do. So does this mean that you and I are being entertained through Hollywood by mentally ill people to the detriment of our own mental and physical health? Now, according to the article we just read, which included the late Patty Duke, she mentioned that fear permeates among actors in Hollywood regarding mental illness. Well, it's reasonable to believe that in this age of truth and enlightenment, that most people employed through Hollywood know the ramifications of the many violent movies they participate in producing. Therefore, this fear extends to the reality that most of them go along with wickedness for the sake of their careers. Now let us consider what this book, the Bible, has to state about this. But the fearful, and the unbelieving, and the abominable, and murderers, and whoremongers, and sorcerers, and idolaters, and all liars shall have their part in the lake which burneth with fire and brimstone, which is the second death. Well, you mean to say there are two deaths? Well, let's consider that question. When a person in darkness is enlightened through truth and divine guidance, then at that moment they receive light and life, which frees them from the darkness of the synagogue of Satan's false teaching and false world. However, because the world of darkness still exists, it pulls on us. And this places each of us in the valley of decision. That is, do we side with what is right, or do we go backward into the darkness of wickedness? This is not only the decision for those in Hollywood, but also for all of us, the general public. Now, can we reject the darkness of the synagogue of Satan? Do we have the strength to reject the darkness of the synagogue of Satan, even though it may appear that doing such would mean some measure of financial, social, or career loss? Well, whether we believe in God or not, we are obligated to uphold the truth and do what is right based on the knowledge of the truth. So why can't we then just reverse this thing a bit? Why should we have the fear of loss? Why can't we replace that with the thought of empowerment? So instead of thinking about the loss of money, of opportunity and fame, why not think about exercising leadership to make society better in terms of morality, decency, justice, and equality, since our children and grandchildren and so forth have to live in this world? Why wouldn't we want to make the world a better place? Or maybe people don't think about that. We think about the things we can individually give to our children, but sometimes we don't think about that they have to be in this same world. So the best gift would be an effort to improve the quality of life throughout the world, at least throughout society. Now, the Honorable Louis Farrakhan continues in this book, A Torchlight for America. He states, "Our gifts as artists are a blessing from God. We have the responsibility of the proper use of our gifts. Additionally, movie producers, record producers, and publishers all have a responsibility to the spiritual, moral, and mental well-being of the American people. If the artists turn away from filth and indecency, then the people will follow." I'm going to pause right here. See, they tell you as an artist that people want filth. You have a clean song, they say, no, dirty it up because that's what sells. That ain't what sells. That's what you're making sell. So how long does this go on? It gets more filthy and more filthy under that kind of senseless equation, which is not even an equation. Continuing, this is why it is written in the scriptures that the people need a good shepherd. In every field of endeavor, good leadership has to be asserted to turn corruption, greed, filth, and indecency into righteousness. Now, assertion is a big word. It means you got to press forward, that this is the right thing to do, and damn it, I'm going to do it. Now, we can find the same exhortation, this requirement, in the Bible, again, which most of those in the artistic community claim to believe in. And we're going to move beyond just Jesus paying the price and what it means to be saved, and think about and read about what is being put on us, which sometimes the preacher overlooks doing, because there's more entertainment to talk about what Jesus did 2,000 years ago instead of what needs to be done today in this filthy, dirty, corrupt society and those among us who make it that way. So we say, get out of the world, but we make the world. Now, going back to the book of Psalms in the Bible, we find these marching orders. God standeth in the congregation of the mighty. He judgeth among the gods. How long will ye judge unjustly and accept the persons of the wicked? Now, of course, this can't be talking about God because he doesn't judge unjustly. He's talking about the people. Selah. Defend the poor and fatherless. Do justice to the afflicted and needy. Deliver the poor and needy. Rid them out of the hand of the wicked. They know not, neither will they understand. They walk on in darkness. All the foundations of the earth are out of course. I have said, ye are gods, and all of you are children of the Most High. In Psalms. Well, we know that God is generally defined as one exercising force and power. So as such, these verses empower each individual to beat back wickedness in the wicked and help those victimized by the leaders of this satanic world. This is how each of us display the God power within us. Now, unfortunately, in this chapter in Psalms, the remaining verses indicate that we will not take hold of our godlike responsibilities. So it states in these verses, but ye shall die like men and fall like one of the princes. Arise, O God, judge the earth, for thou shalt inherit all nations. Well, this indicates since we are not going to establish justice on earth because we love the wicked leaders of this world for the sake of money, for the sake of fame and accolades, selfishness, nasty selfishness, then the supreme being, O God, is going to do it. And he does this through his Christ. Thank you for listening. May Allah continue to bless you and your families. Assalamu alaikum.